name is Emanuel Arruda. You can call me Manny. Let's just begin and get into it. I want to begin with thank you. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. It was a short one. No, I changed my welcome to thank you because I want to thank you, all of you that I met last night at dinner and got to connect with, because I didn't know really what you all did and how important it is to the world. I mean, I knew that what was missing in terms of in companies and people's lives between coaching and values to help companies get from where they are in that gap to where they need to be in terms of leadership. But I didn't really understand fully the tools, the processes, and more importantly, the heart that all of you bring to this industry that I didn't know existed. I built this business, it was two guys in a photocopier when we started, and I've just sort of been bootstrapping it along. I didn't realize that I could call on people like you for help. So thank you for doing what you're doing and for coming here to learn from each other and to grow. It's a remarkable thing, and as you hear my story, you'll figure out, man, how the hell did this guy do this by accident? It's kind of amazing. Okay, so let's begin. Emanuel Arruda, League Financial Partners. And happy to say that this year we hit the Profit 200, Canada's, I think we're 13th in Canada of Canada's fastest growing companies, and all because of our values. So the question for today is $0 to $1 billion in 6 years. How did we do that? And the answer is by turning core values into capital value, quite literally. So my story begins with an ending. There's a poet by a Sufi poet named Rumi who talks about spirituality being like a jewel buried under a house. And in order to get that jewel so that you can then build a bigger, better house, you have to raise the house to the ground and dig everything up. And essentially that's what I did in my life in 2003. In 2003, I had not seen my wife in 2 years. She was a professional actress, and every year that I knew her for the previous 10 years, she was away for 6 to 10 months. Now, this is kind of silly. I didn't want to stop her from her dream. She didn't want me to stop me from mine. So we decided, let's just split up. We won't tell our families. We won't get anyone involved. And we'll just go from there. So we decided to sell our house. And in 2 days, I just put signs up around the neighborhood, sold everything I owned in 2 days. It wasn't like a lawn sale with junk from the garage. This was like my best stuff, right? Big screen TV, leather couch, all that kind of thing. And I literally fought for every nickel on my front lawn. I remember a book that I paid, $75 for that I was selling for $1, and this guy offered me 75 cents. And I go, get the hell off my lawn. And he literally walked away, and he took about 15 steps, and he went, what am I doing? And he came back and gave me that extra quarter. And I was like, yes, because I got no plan, right? I need every quarter I can get. And in that 2 days, I learned a couple of important lessons. The first one is that the things you own end up owning you. I can't tell you how free I was to be able to go in any direction I wanted, standing on my own 2 feet with the clothes on my back. And I literally got my life down to 6 of those Rubbermaid buckets, 3 to store and 3 to carry. And the second lesson that I learned is nothing in this world is worth what you paid for it, no matter what you paid for it. And that was the beginning of the shedding of any materialism on my part. So there's our 2 checks that we were going to split up and say goodbye from. It was kind of interesting because here we are, we've never even raised our voices at each other, and here we are getting a divorce, kind of a strange situation. So I said to her, well, why don't you come with me for one last road trip back to LA? I was living with some friends in LA at the time, and we'll say goodbye from there. She thought that was a good idea. And over that trip, we got to know each other again. I'm like, oh, that's why I married you. You're pretty nice. And she's like, yeah, you too. And so by the time we got to Las Vegas, I think it was, we thought, why don't we do this? Why don't we both drop our careers and let's stay together? We made a lot of money off that house and the house before by accident because we could only afford crappy houses and we'd fix them and flip them. This is before, I don't know if you have it here, but there's all those TV shows where you take these ugly houses and make money. So she said, well, that's a good idea. Couldn't believe she was going for this. I'm like, all right. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't want to live through 40 days of renovation hell with no clean place to sit down and you've torn everything out and you're doing your dishes and everything else in the bathtub. So why don't we buy a motorhome? Then we can live wherever we are. We can have a clean place to live in our driveway and move from wherever we are. She thought, that's a good idea. I'm like, I can't believe she's falling for this. Okay. So we ended up buying this 1976 Vogue RV. Green shag, wood paneling, bar in the back, blender on the countertop for margaritas. Like, it was awesome. And 40 miles later, it broke down. So we left it at this place where we purchased it in Medicine Hat, Alberta, and came back. And by the time we came back, it was November in Medicine Hat, Alberta in Canada, and it was 40 degrees below zero. That's Celsius. And a blizzard with lightning. Never seen anything before in my life. And the guy on the radio was like, nobody should be out today. I'm like, F it, I got to get to the border fast. I got to get down south where it's sunny. And we got to the border, and they're like, you don't own a house? I'm like, no, I sold it. You don't have a job? Well, no, I got money in the bank from the house. They're like, oh, F off. They wouldn't let me cross the border. I'm like, hey, I'm Canadian. I'm not Mexican. We're going to come back, you know. And so we're like, what now? And I don't know, do you have Walmart here? No? Okay, well, Walmart's this big chain store. And Walmart basically lets people with RVs become their free security if you can stay in their parking lots overnight if you want. So I'm like, man, I don't want to live in a Walmart parking lot in the middle of the winter. This is not a good plan. So Christine says to me, well, let's drive to Vancouver, the west side of Canada. It rains there in the winter. I'm from Toronto, where it's always cold and snowy. So I couldn't even imagine this, but okay, let's go. We got to Vancouver and found out there's a place even warmer in Canada called Victoria. Okay, well, let's go. So I don't know where the picture is. So we headed for Vancouver, and there's the sign that says Hope. That's the name of the city in Vancouver. Pretty amazing. It was like all of just following the omens. If you've read The Alchemist, you know what I'm talking about. And by the time we got to Vancouver, it was kind of an interesting situation. That's the inside of our house. I lived in that RV for 2 years, 2.5 years with no paycheck. And when we got to Victoria, I decided, well, I'm going to look for a man who's a real estate investor himself, a realtor's investor himself, so we can speak the same language and we can sort of partner up and try to find some of these houses. So I met this guy named Alan. Alan was 63 at the time, and he told me he was the real estate king, basically. So we're having lunch. And then I told him about me. I owned an advertising company for 10 years, and suddenly he got all excited. He's talking opportunity, syndication. And syndication is when you take a great big investment and you break it up so individuals can put as much as they want and own a proportionate share of it. I'm like, well, that sounds really good, but you can't explain it to me very well, so good luck raising any money without me, because I'm not going to help anybody take some little blue-haired old lady's life savings. So unless you can show me you have a vested interest, we'll have a vested interest in increasing the value of the investment for these people, I'm not interested. And he literally had no plan. So I drove away. 4 days later, his partner, who's now my partner, Adam Gant, came and found me and came up with what's now known as the league guarantee, where we take no ownership, no cash flow up front in these properties that we put together, and instead we earn 20% of the increase in value we create. So our incentives are in line, our interests are in line with our investors. I'm like, all right, this guy's putting his money where his mouth is. I can't see my next slide, so I have to move forward just to see what I'm talking about next. Okay, not yet. So I immediately got to work. I don't know about you, but I don't really trust salespeople. Now, up until this point in my life, I need to explain to you, between 2001 and 2003, I used to say suffered, but now I would say I've been blessed with some really great betrayals. From my business partner, my former business partner, my biggest client, pastor of my church, and even my family. It was a devastating, devastating time in my life that still gives me a little bit of weepiness when I think about it. So I was pretty much a mess, irritable bowel syndrome, couldn't eat anything. It was a disaster. So at this point, once I decided to partner with these three guys, I didn't want anybody, some salesman, making promises I couldn't keep or didn't know about, twisting somebody's arm to invest more than they should or sooner than they would feel comfortable. So instead, I collected all the information I could and wrote the Blue Book of Real Estate Syndication. And I put very, very verbose ads in the newspaper. Normally what people do will put little ads and say, call us for more information, and you'll get the salesperson on the phone who will try to talk you into being interested, even you don't know what it is. We did the opposite. I tried to do a filter rather than a dragnet. So we had very verbose ads that said exactly what we were, and at the end it said, call for your Blue Book. And then people would phone and say, well, tell me about this investment. I'm like, no, we don't do that. We don't have salespeople here. What? So now no resistance. What do you mean you don't have salespeople? Well, we have this book. I'll send it to you. Read it. If you're interested, call me back. We'll talk about investment. If not, send it back in the other envelope. Okay? And it worked. And there's also some various other kind of filtering processes that we did. So everything seemed to be going well. We're now starting to raise money. It took us almost a year to close that first little $4 million shopping center. It was a little strip mall, ugly little mall, already cash flowed well, so we knew the investor would be happy, but had plenty of room to increase it and make it better. Now, I don't know what your experience in life has been, but unfortunately mine has been that every man I ever met said he was honest, but they all seem to have a different definition of honesty. Anyone else have that experience? Yeah. So at that point, my two partners seemed to be doing what they said they were going to do, but I just couldn't put myself in that position that I've been before in my life where these people that are closest to me betray me. So I literally disappeared into the woods. I think it was 40 days. And I had hair down to here. Oh, there's a video I'll show you guys later if you come in the afternoon with big beard. That's another story. And I fought I searched my soul. And it was the hardest thing I'd ever had to write. And I figured out, okay, what must I absolutely have from this business, this partnership, this thing that we're doing in order to stay, and what will I absolutely not stand for and I'm out. And I wrote what's called our credo, which is on your chairs right now. So our credo, the most important one is we believe in, number one, we believe in the primacy of the golden rule and will adhere to it in all our pursuits. In all our intentions and activities, we will espouse this tenet. We will do for others as we would have them do for us. That's the first thing, alignment. And there's a couple other ones in here that I love, like everyone has equal value, even if they don't have equal wealth. And number 12 is the purpose of our company now. We believe that with each investment we initiate and each new member partner, we help to achieve intergenerational wealth. We add strength to our fabric of our free society. I'll talk about that in a minute. So I came back with the credo and said, all right, boys, this is what I've been doing. First of all, I also wanted to see if they were working while I was away, because if they weren't, I'm out. Right? But they were. Or one of them was anyway, Adam was. And I said, these are the rules we said we're going to play by, isn't it? Oh, yes, Manny, absolutely, absolutely. This is great. And outside these boundaries, we do not go. Is that correct? Absolutely, absolutely. I'm like, great, sign it. They're like, what? Sign it. Why? Because we're going to put it in our blue book, we're going to put it on our website, and we're going to hang our butts out there like a couple of piñatas so anybody could take a swing at us if they see us saying one thing and doing another. Because we all know it's a lot easier to see that than wait for the dust to settle and the lawyers to take off with all the money, right? And so Adam was like, where's my pen? I'll sign it right now. He was excited. And Alan was like, whoa, whoa, let me read that again. And me and Adam looked at each other like, what, dude? This is basic ethics, right? And that was the beginning of the end. Our core values was the place where we started to make that first decision. Plus, Alan was 63. I was 33 at the time. Adam was 23 at the time. And so the idea of the league integrity guarantee where we take no money up front and wait till the end to earn our share really did not work for Alan. Alan was looking for money now where we were young enough to wait for money later. So we continued on. Adam and I continued on with the properties. Alan left, and we named the company League. And the League meaning that it's a league of like-minded people. It's also a unit of measurement, so it's kind of an interesting word. So our core values is quite literally how we operate our business. That's been, 7 years now? And every single meeting from the very first day, we always begin by reading our core values, our credo round robin before we begin. It reminds us who we are, what we're here to do, why we do it, and more importantly, why we do not do what we don't do. And you'll see from the way that it was written, it says we believe. Great. A lot of mission statements say we believe, but what about a we shall? What are you going to do about what you believe? And every one of ours has that in it. Okay. So then, again, still fear wanting to make sure that nobody's going to screw this up, because our core purpose is to create intergenerational wealth. What I did now is, I was imagining one day, 100 years in the future, when Adam and I are either dust in the ground or, heads in a jar somewhere, and now there's this new president standing at the boardroom table saying, we're going to get into small arms manufacturer. That's where the money is. I wanted everybody around that table to be able to point to our credo on the wall, our crest, our coat of arms, and say, that thing says we don't do that. This literally took me 2 years to get approved by the Heraldic Authority of Canada, and every one of the symbols on our coat of arms represents a tenet of our credo. So, for instance, the lion has to do with courage and strength. The ox, it's not a bull. They're talking about bull markets. What are bulls good for? One thing, right? That's it, screwing you. An ox you can actually put to work. So the ox has to do with hard work. You've got the land underneath having to do with real estate, the shield having to do with the strength and security, the two shields inside having to do with the two forms of protection that we provide our member partners, which is positive interdependence, the golden rule, and member partnership, which again I'll talk about this afternoon. In the middle there's the sextant, the navigator's tool for mapping, and on top is the beacon, which used to be back in the old days, if you're having some guests come over to your house, you'd light a huge fire so they can find your house. So it's about the light of knowledge and attracting people to it. So we begin business. What happens next? Our success strategies. The first thing we did right from the beginning was to give value in advance by providing the Blue Book of Real Estate Syndication so that people could educate themselves. It's literally in it. It's why real estate, why syndication, why group investments, and then why us. And it talks about our values. The second thing is the League Integrity Guarantee, where again, one of our tenants says that we don't prosper until you do first. So give value in advance. Second one is partner with only the best of the best. We were smart, even though it's very expensive. It's definitely worth it. We just took that risk. And we have 3 different auditors. We have so many investments now going that we couldn't just use one audit team. So we have KPMG, Deloitte, and PricewaterhouseCoopers. We also use the best lawyers, accountants, analysts, tax experts, and of course, now with all of that we have, and especially with our values, it's amazing. It's not amazing, it's incredible. I don't know how to explain it. I'm so happy that we attract the best of the best executives and staff with us as well. My goal is in the next 12 months is to be known as Canada's best place to work. And we literally have executives, some of them who are just like on the verge of retirement from the United States or wherever, who are like, where have you been all my life? This is the kind of business I've wanted to focus my efforts on. These are people who run massive public companies, massive real estate investment trusts, and now are working for us because of our values. It is a distinguishing point. The other thing is, there are a few people, we've made some mishires, who gave lip service to it. And now we have sort of a grid, I think I may show you a little bit here later, on how we choose people. But that has been our distinguishing point. Okay, and the last one is provide purpose, not just product. So not only do we have our credo and our coat of arms, which talks about our purpose, intergenerational wealth, which I'll explain in a moment, is the reason we exist. Has anyone here ever heard of it or read a book called Good to Great? Okay, good. It's business tome, right? So one of the things he talks about in Good to Great is every business needs to have a hedgehog concept. So a hedgehog is an animal that is the world's best at doing one thing and the one thing alone, and that's rolling up in a ball to protect itself. No other animal does it. So Adam and I decided, well, what's going to be our hedgehog concept? Are we going to be the best, the world's best standard-setting real estate development company on earth? It's going to be hard to do. There are companies in England who have been doing this for hundreds of years, right? I don't think we can be the gold standard. We could get as good as them, but never be the best. So we decided to sort of like karate masters, they don't aim, when they're punching through boards, they don't aim at the front board or the middle board. They aim way past the last board. Or if you're going to punch some guy in the face, you don't aim at his nose, you aim way at the back of the head. Use that later if you want. And so we decided we were going to punch past the board and have our purpose be to create intergenerational wealth for families. Now, this logo here is our foundation. This is the interesting bit that ties it all together. When I think about League and who we are today, have you ever seen one of those fancy magazines, and there's those fancy expensive men's watches where you can see right through to the beautiful golden gears all turning together? That's how I feel about our company and transparency. I want everybody to know how it works, because the thing that drives me bananas is people say, oh, it's too good to be true. Everything's supposed to be this good. Everything's not good enough by comparison, but everybody's been worn down so much, screwed over, lied to, that, oh, it's too good to be true if it's actually something that's good. So showing people your transparency and putting it, how you put it in action is so, so important. So here's what we did. So we give value in advance. We have our League Integrity Guarantee, where we take no ownership or cash flow up front, so we have to earn our share in order to get our share of a profit. And then we also created a foundation. And how many have heard of something called 1% for Humanity? This is where large companies like GE, Starbucks, I think is one of them, they donate 1% of their bottom line to philanthropic efforts every year. We decided we'd do 5% from the beginning, so you really pay attention to it if it's something that kind of hurts a little bit, especially when you're starting out in your smaller company. And besides the foundation itself, which is interesting the way we set that up, so that families could use our foundation rather than having to spend the money and the expense on the lawyers and everything else to keep their own going, they can use ours for free, and we'll direct their donations to whoever they want, and not a cent comes off it because we do that for free. That's our donation back to them. But the other thing that we did was created a profit-sharing program. So as our employees are sitting at their desks trying to figure out how they're going to make League more profitable, and the investments more profitable, right? So if we can have our expenses lower, we'll actually be able to last longer waiting for these profits to come out and treat our employees well. And also the more profitable our investments are, the more of our 20% of the income or the increase we'll get later. So while they're doing that, and we are literally looking at things like how many clicks on the photocopier, those contests and all that kind of thing, between the 5% for Humanity and the fact that our whole company is tied together in a circle with the profit sharing, while they're sitting at their desks just making us more profitable, there's more money to be made to go out into the philanthropic world. So while they're sitting at their desk, we're sending someone else to Africa. We're sending someone else to the Dominican Republic. We're sending someone else to these places to do good. So while they're sitting at their desk, they're doing good. You see how it all ties together? Does that make sense? I hope I did a good enough job to explain that. So we provide institutional grade investments for families. So normally, if you were going to buy a mall or build a city, which we're doing, you'd either be a banker, some super mega hyper rich dude, or a pension fund or something like that. And what we've done is democratized it so individuals can literally own as small or as large a piece of a property or a group of properties as they want. So for instance, if you're a person who's a real estate investor of some sort yourself, instead of having someone renting out your basement and having a tenant in your basement paying your rent, you can literally have Walmart or the banks paying you rent. We have a little commercial in Canada. It's kind of funny. There's these guys in suits walking around with their hands in other people's pockets, and it's bankers, with their hands in your pockets. Well, we got our hands in their pockets because they all pay us rent, and it flows back through to our member partners. So we provide proportional ownership in tangible real estate and sustainable energy projects. We also have Canada's largest functioning array of solar energy panels in Ontario. We provide an attractive total return on investment, cash flow, growth of capital, or both, and that's integral to intergenerational wealth, and I'll talk about that in a second. It's very tax efficient, because obviously it's not about investments, it's not what you make, it's what you get to keep. Obviously it's important. And it's low volatility because we're not traded on the stock market. We do have public funds as well, but most of ours are private. And as little as $1,000. We literally have people who have as little as $1,000 and as much as $16 million with us. And we've never asked anybody how much money they have or how much money they want to invest. It's not our business. We let them decide, put their toe in the water, and when they're comfortable, come back for more if they want to. So we do all that stuff. We're this, 1.35, I think now, $billion real estate development company. We're actually building an entire city right now on Vancouver Island. But what is our business really? Intergenerational wealth. It's so important that we trademark the term. If you do a Google search right now for the terms intergenerational wealth, you'll always see one other word behind it, and that's transfer. All the investment brokers and financial advisors right now are talking about the big intergenerational wealth transfer that's occurring as the baby boomers are preparing to leave the planet and leave their assets to the next generation. And what they're talking about is how they're going to get a piece of it in their commissions as it goes from one generation to the next. That's not our concept of intergenerational wealth at all. Has anyone here read the books, I forget his last name, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Anyone? Okay. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad is an interesting book about a fellow who's basically raised by two dads. His own dad was the poor dad. He was a university professor, made a decent income, but was never really rich. And his friend's dad was his second dad, and he's the rich dad. This guy never finished high school, but he was a multimillionaire. And he had some key principles. The first one is that rich people are rich because they buy assets, and poor people are poor because they buy liabilities. And so by his definition, an asset is anything that puts money into your pocket on a regular basis, and a liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket on a regular basis. So for instance, if you own a boat and you're not a commercial fisherman, that's a liability. Or if you own a house, this is an interesting one. Is your house an asset or liability? Anybody know? 10 minutes already? Oh, damn, gotta hurry. Well, if you've got your house rented out and it's cash flowing, it's an asset for you. If not, and you're just making mortgage payments, it's an asset for the bank and a liability for you. So what we do in our company is create assets, income-producing assets, so that as you buy more of these, and it'll be different for everybody's family, depending on where they start from, you will hopefully have this passive income coming from assets that you purchase to replace the income that comes from your work. So rather than trading dollars, or time for dollars, you'll have more and more of these assets until hopefully one day the key is to have enough income coming in from the assets that you own that you don't have to work for anymore, that it pays for your lifestyle expenses. So imagine for a moment not having to work at a job you wouldn't otherwise, just to put food on the table. I'm not saying people shouldn't work. I think everybody should work, but at a job you love, like some of you, I hope, rather than a job that you have to just to put food on the table. So imagine having all of your basic expenses, so your mortgage, your gas, your food, your fuel, your entertainment, paid for by your investments. And now you could do whatever you wanted. What would you do with that extra time? Would you become a better listener and suddenly become a better husband or wife? Would you spend more time with your family and become a better grandfather or grandmother? Would you become more active in the local community, your parish of your church? Would you go to another country and help someone else increase the quality of their life? That's why we're in business. That's what intergenerational wealth is about. And that's how I'm transforming the world through intergenerational wealth. So this is our symbol. It's you being the father of intergenerational wealth, father or mother of intergenerational wealth for your family, the person that makes that decision that this is the track we're going to go, and start talking about the family's assets in family trust, for instance. So it's you becoming a steward of a storehouse rather than a pilferer of a piggy bank. How would those kinds of conversations change a child? I imagine, I don't have kids yet, please God, one day. I imagine my child sitting on the kitchen floor playing with pots and pans, and mommy and daddy are talking about the family's wealth and the family trust and how they're going to pass it on. How does that affect that child rather than the kinds of conversations that are happening now, or none? Most people don't talk about money in their family. But 1 degree difference, 1 shift over time, and you end up in a completely different place. How do you make your family the Johnson & Johnson family, the Rockefeller family? Right? If we all came from Adam and Eve or Noah after the flood, well, where's my intergenerational wealth? How come we don't all have it? You know, in Japan, they talk about 100-year plans. In North America, the natives there, whenever the tribes get together, or rather the tribe gets together to make an important decision that affects the tribe, one of them is selected to represent the next seven generations of the faces of the unborn. How deep is your planning for your family? So that's why we're in business. Is it working? Well, because of our values and the way that we've done business, which is completely counter to anything else that we've ever seen in the financial industry. We have 1.5, it's actually more than that now, billion in assets under management, more than 30 limited partnerships, a private and a public real estate investment trust. $63 million has been redistributed back to our member partners since we started 6.5, almost 7 years ago. And right now, 3,621 member partners, and that's a key phrase that I'll talk about this afternoon, have joined with us together in league. And we just became Canada's 13th profitable company by doing the right thing, following our hearts. How do we deliver it? Member partnership. It's the difference that makes the difference. You're a member with us in a like-minded group. You're a partner with us in these investments. How do we manage all these people now? Using the Rockefeller habits. Some of them I was talking about with someone last night. And evaluating team members. Who's red, who's yellow, who's green, who's super green. Who's, you know, if you look at that, yeah, like that. So who's giving, if you look at the bottom level, just lip service only to your core values. We had a president who did that. He nearly destroyed our company and our culture. Who buys into the core values but falls short under pressure. Who's consistent even at the expense of our short-term gains. And who is consistent even when it personally is detrimental to them. That's the kind of people you want working in your business. So living the values. What does core values do for you? Why do you need them? Well, first of all, it gives your brand identity. As you've seen from us standing out the way that we're different, it's a completely different conversation. And what is a business, really? It's just a bunch of conversations. It's not the building with the big sign on the front. It's not the computers. It's people having conversations daily about the business called league. That's it. And as long as they're having conversations that are pointed through with purpose, then we're going to drive a little bit clearer towards something more meaningful than just cutting checks and making sure people get paid. Now it's this person needs this because, right? Laser-like hiring and firing. It really forces you to become better. Because I'll tell you right now, I mean, you guys are out there fixing culture. Imagine getting it right from the beginning, which we started to, and then we screwed up, and now we're back on the back on the path again. People don't know it, but your interview starts when you come to meet us the moment we pick you up at the airport. So your driver is already part of the interview process. How do they treat the little people? We had one guy who had a CV down to the floor, and he was great as long as he was talking to anybody who was director level and above. But when he was talking to women, we found out later when we flew him in for the second time, we fly people in at least two times, maybe three, and suddenly he wrote off a greeting card that he decided to buy and expense it back to us. You haven't even worked for us yet, dude. Like, come on. Give your head a shake. It makes managing and leading your team a lot easier because there's a clear set of rules. In fact, our salespeople are not called representatives or salespeople. They're called member services managers. You service the members, and you're a manager. That means if someone asks you, can you do this for me, figure it out. Golden rule is right there. You're a manager. Manage it. Don't have to go ask a supervisor to do the right thing. It filters out the small stuff. People now can have a general idea of what needs to be done. It provides a framework for decision making throughout the entire company. Great story. When we were first starting out, Adam and I are sitting there with this guy. I had no idea, right? Adam's the real estate side of the business. I'm sort of the marketing side of the business, or I was. And there's this fellow there. Adam wants me there to sort of do my spidey senses thing, he says, on him. And so this guy turns to us, we're going to buy a mall off him. And he's like, well, what I'd like to do is I want to hire your company to syndicate my property to your investors. And I was like, I don't understand what he's talking about. And he repeated it again. I want to hire your company to syndicate my property to your investors. And I'm like, isn't that what we're doing right now? He's like, no, you don't understand. I will give you, what did he say? $100,000 or a Porsche each, he owned a Porsche dealership, if my property is one of the ones that you will buy and syndicate to your investors. So I looked at Adam, I was a little confused, I didn't understand what was going on. We went into another room later to kind of look at the contracts and all that. And unbeknownst to me, Adam had asked our assistant to come in and just make up some excuse to get us out of the room. Oh, I'm sorry, we need to sign some papers. So we left. I'm like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And so like, what do you want to do? And I said, well, let's take the $100,000. We'll take it off the purchase price. We announce it to our member partners. We're heroes. We'll start our zero mark lower. He's like, great idea. We go back in there. He's like, no, I want you to have it. I want you to have it. I'm like, well, I don't know if you understand. We get paid to do this. That's okay. Thank you. But we didn't end up working with him. But after he left, and Adam and I used to share an office, and so our desks are across from each other, and we just stunned silence. I don't know. It felt like 5 minutes, just literally staring at the wall. And then finally, Adam turns to me and he says, the Credo makes it really easy to make a decision, doesn't it? I was like, yeah, it does. And that was the day that I knew that I had the right partner. And your company will perform better. Because culture eats process for breakfast. When systems breaks down, when your computers break down, when there isn't a process there, if people know what their outcome is and they know what the right thing to do is and why they're doing it, they're going to get it done and you're going to be proud of them. And values grease the gears. I talk about, my personal motto is that the lack of trust between any two people is sand in the gears of the economy. If you think about it, the longer it takes for me to trust you and shake your hand and say, we're going to do this, and now we're going to sign the piece of paper, and then we're going to take this piece of paper back to our office and it's going to get processed, and someone in the delivery department is going to do anything. And all of those different interactions, the longer, the more mistrust there is in any of those interactions, it takes everything so much longer to do. That's our small economy within our business and the economies within the world. If we can trust one another sooner by having aligned incentives, a win-win, a positive interdependence, everything just gets done smoother. So values grease the gears. So what now? Now it's time for you guys to ask yourself some questions. And here's some of them. If you had total corporate alignment, if you had a clear set of values with just, don't say what we believe, but also what we shall do about our beliefs, or shall not, which is just as important, if not more so, what would you do to create corporate traditions and standards?
Maybe.
Yep.
Can I mention one thing?
Sure.
We will make all the presentations available on MyCTT, so I see people like furiously scribbling.
Really? Okay. Good. Okay.
Yes.
So what would your metrics be? Would you also have some that had to do with values, right? Like giving lip service to the core values rather than, and that kind of thing? How would you measure even at the HR level? Hiring and nurturing leaders. I say culture alignment, CAs versus CVs, right? Because you can hire, someone who has the right heart and train them for talent, but you can't, or for skills, but you can't do the opposite, as you know. Partners and suppliers. We had a really great lawyer, but she was nasty on the phone. And when she was working for us, people thought we were nasty. So she had to go. Didn't matter how great she was. Partner and client selection. We filter people out. Product, selection, sourcing, and delivering. Pricing. How are you going to price? What's your incentive fee? How do the commissions work? Advertising. When do you do it? Where do you do it? How do you do it? And are there any hurdles to people joining so you make sure that you get the right people so you don't have to fire your client later or spend so much resources dealing with people who just shouldn't be talking to your people on the phone and sucking that life out of them? I've tried to make it in a way that our member services managers, I could be here all day long on the phone. I don't want them dealing with jerks. And the distribution channels. Who, how much, how often. So, discuss. Is there time or no?
I don't think that we have time. Oh, do we have time? Still, we do. Great. I thought we were out of time.
So you have 10 minutes to turn to your
good
partner.
job.
If you want to turn around to groups of four, move the chairs around, that's up to you. But there's some of the little discussion points there. Wherever the one that gives you the most pain, I suggest you start there. Ask a question and see if there's someone else around you who might be able to have some insight for you. Okay? So discuss.